There you go. You're making me wonder. All right, this is the Committee on Legislative Affairs. This is Thursday, April 3rd, 2014. We're at 6 p.m. I have Councilor Simelli.
Here.
I got Councilor Napolitano.
Here.
I have Councilor Sani.
Here.
We have 3 members present. We do have
We
a
have a
quorum.
quorum. Let's stand and salute the flag, please. Before we start, I'd like to, I got a memo that Councilor John Hanlon will be a little bit late. Clerk, please read number 1.
All right. The first piece of business, this is a resolution by Council Rosa DeFlorio that rules be established on the appropriate distribution of city council expenses.
Councilor Sani.
Yes, can we invite Council DeFlorio, the city auditor, and the assistant city solicitor up?
Yes, please. Thank you for appearing. Please state your name and title for the records.
Richard Biscay, City Auditor. Dave Rodriguez, Assistant City Solicitor.
Okay, who?
Yes, I'd like to have Mr. Rodriguez and Mr. Biscay explain the changes that have been made.
Mr. Rodriguez.
There were a number of changes made following the last meeting of the committee. The first was in D1D and E. D was amended to reflect that each member shall be entitled to a $25 monthly reimbursement for their cell phones or for their house phones, which are the ones they use in the course of their official duties. And in E was added to include internet usage at the home. That's used in the course of their, and that's also $25 reimbursement for that. And also C3 was amended in the last sentence, just from a clerical oversight on our end, to reflect that all expenses must be accompanied with appropriate documentation substantiating the expense. Just a way of saying it is a receipt.
Councilor Napolitano.
Okay, regarding phone and internet, because I brought this up at our last meeting, was the fact that some bundled services are not going to give you a breakdown of separate phone and internet. It's going to be one set price for cable, internet, and phone, and that's going to be rather difficult to ascertain. What would we use in lieu of that to show justification for that service?
I would bring your cable and you have to get 25% for internet or 25 for it, or you bring in, so whatever bill you brought in, so if you wanted to be reimbursed for your cell phone, you bring in your cell phone bill, you get 25 from that, and internet, but you can't get 25 for your home phone and your cell phone.
Right,
So
right, only one phone.
only one phone you
Yeah.
can get reimbursed for. So you would bring your cable bill, you get 25 for that, and bring your cell phone bill, you get 25.
Okay, so it doesn't matter what the amount is, so you indicate that you have the service then.
Imagine paying out for the service
Right.
getting reimbursed for, so up to $25.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you. Hey, Joe?
Councilor Rosa DeFlorio.
I'm going to recommend that every city council gets this mailed out before the next meeting, because they have to understand what they're voting on. If it goes out, whether it goes out favorable, unfavorable, every city council should have a copy of this. So, I'd like to recommend that a copy gets mailed to all the rest of the city councils.
That's
We can
Council-
email that as well. We can send it to your email addresses. It's not a problem.
Councilor Sonic.
Thank you. Just one question. I noticed that we have, you said, mentioned one phone. Some of us use both, our home and cell phone. Is that something, they get 25 for each, or is that something, you're gonna say only one?
I would say only one. If you'd like to change it to reflect both, that's.
Up to the body?
The pleasure of the body, I guess.
What's your recommendation? Would you get a motion, or
Let's give us a minute to,
The way that the rule's written now, it would allow 25 monthly for the use of both. So it could be, you could, in theory, split it up $12.50 per. So if you use, your home phone for some and your cell phone for some, you can split the 25 reimbursement for both. In theory, the way that the rule's written, it was designed. When I wrote it, I didn't take that into account. I figured that you would either ask for 25 for your cell phone or for your landline, one or the other. So it's the pleasure of the committee as to what they would recommend.
I make a motion for favorable action as amended, and vote out, and send it out to, the next council meeting.
Motion is to make a motion as amended and to refer it out to the copies to the full.
The amendments that you see on.
If I could, this is not actually, this is new language for us. So there really isn't anything to amend. This is the proposed rules for expenses. So I would recommend that this be sent out with a favorable recommendation as is.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. The motion is to
Thank
refer
you.
with favorable recommendation and to send out copies at our next formal meeting. Councilor Reed, number 2. Oh, thank you for appearing, and with customary thanks. Clerk will read number 2.
All right, item number 2. There's an order by Councilor Michael Marchese as president that the city council and the mayor's office work collaboratively to develop a snow shoveling ordinance.
Councilor Sonic.
Can we invite the mayor's chief of staff and city solicitor?
Please state your name and title, please, for the records. Okay. This is John Hanlon's piece, and he's not here. He's supposed to be late today, so I don't know if we should.
This wasn't from John Hanlon.
Who's going to give the quote, please?
Oh,
He was-
okay.
I have some information, too.
Okay,
Can we have the city solicitor give some update?
sure. Mr. Mejia.
Last time we were here, Councilor Sarni had asked had been concerned that property owners would be held liable for shoveling if somebody slipped and fell, and she said that she recalled that that was the opinion that was given. And I went through our old file in our office, and we have some things that were highlighted that say the opposite, which was what Melissa and I had thought to begin with, that the liability doesn't fall onto the property owner if they shovel. There was a case against Target that sort of reversed the rule that held property owners liable for shoveling. But that court case against Target kind of reversed that rule, quote unquote.
I have a question. Oh, okay. Councilor McGonigal.
Go ahead,
Go ahead,
Mr.
no.
Chairman. You want me to speak?
Yes.
So I understand this. What are we trying to do here? Create a law that residents have to shovel this sidewalk?
Yeah, this year we got a lot of complaints about snow shoveling, and the mayor decided that the best course of action may be for us to work with you to try to come up with some kind of solution for that. It was probably, I would say, the #1 constituent complaint that we got this year, particularly people trying to walk to school, or people pushing strollers that they could not pass sidewalks, that kids are walking in the street to school. It was a significant, and obviously this was a significant winter as well, but it was a significant increase in complaints from what we usually had gotten, which is why we brought this to you. If you don't mind, Councilor Sani had asked me some information. I don't know if you have any follow-up questions or if you want me to just give the information.
No, go ahead.
Okay.
I'm listening. Thank you.
Yeah, when we discussed this last time, there was a waiver discussion, as we all remember, and Council Sani had asked me to kind of think a little bit about how we perhaps could tighten that up or figure out how many people that was going to be. So I did a little research. So there's 2,674 residents over 70 living in the city of Everett. But we have an elderly person's exemption for our property taxes, and in order to get that elderly person's exemption, you have to be over 70 and you have to have an annual income requirement as well. And there's 80 people that get that. So my thought was that perhaps we change this waiver language that had been suggested originally and have it be that the waiver may be granted to people who qualify for the elderly exemption, because then we'd know they both were elderly and qualified for the income levels. And I do have additional copies if people don't have theirs with them of the language if they'd like them. But that's just my suggestion on that, and I wanted to make sure that I answered, and Councilor Sani had called me with a few questions, and I wanted to make sure I was able to answer those for her. So I didn't put that waiver language in yet, but that would be my suggestion, that if we were going to go forward with this, that we would say the waiver could be granted to anyone who qualified for the elderly exemption on their property taxes, which would be approximately 80 homes.
Councilor Napolitano.
For these people that do waiver, that do qualify for a waiver, and, you know, I've kind of got a little mixed feelings between the difference between age 65 and age 70. Granted, it's a given that seniors are younger than they were 30 years ago, as far as health, being in better health, stronger, and so forth. You'd never know I was 72, but bad joke. I'm 57. But seriously though, there are people that still fall in that category for either health, weight, whatever, that still would fall into that at age 65 over. And I really wouldn't want to be in a position where we're denying that to somebody who's 68 who may have some health issues or may have other reasons that they would qualify. The other thing that I'm concerned with is how do those properties get taken care of? If you have a number of people who qualify, but they happen to be living around a school, which is likely to be the case, at least in a few cases, how are those sidewalks being plowed and taken care of? If you leave it up for the person to try to find somebody, that doesn't mean they're going to find somebody. And if we don't have a backup plan in place for that, then we're really not solving the problem.
So two things. We could keep the language in here that says that the Director of City Services has the authority to issue waivers on a case-by-case basis due to demonstrative physical disability. So we could keep that in there, and that could solve that first problem that you suggested. As far as the second problem, I have a couple of different thoughts. One, we did just purchase a sidewalk plow. Would we be able to get to 80 homes within 24 hours? Would we be able to, we just have another capital improvement plan, we didn't purchase it yet. And would we be able to do it fit on all of these sidewalks? I don't know the answer to that. We do have the school department calling a lot about people who want to do community service, so perhaps we could explore going that route. I know that there's a lot of kids in National Honor Society and other things that they're always looking for projects, so maybe that's something that we could explore going forward. You know, we do have a list of people who shovel, and you know, seniors call a lot for it, and so does everybody. It's actually amazing. But that's something that we could explore.
Are these people that do the shoveling, are they reimbursed in some, are they compensated in some way?
The list we keep now, the current list we keep, they're not community service. They work it out with the homeowner. So they call up to the mayor's office or to Human Services, and they say that they're interested in shoveling. Mostly kids. There's a couple of people who are probably in college, I would say, but they're mostly kids. We keep a list. People call. We actually flip the pages of the list when we send them out so that everyone's not getting the same first 5 names. And they're arranged in addition by area. So if you called and you said, I live on Cottage Street, I'm looking for somebody who lives nearby, I could give you the list of people who are in your area to call. And then you work it out, the financials with the person when they come. And people call and thank us for it all the time because it's, you know, it's better than hoping someone's going to knock on your door.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. But it's a great program that is run.
Is there any type of suggested compensation for that?
Yeah,
or we just leave it totally up to the people?
We leave it totally up to them. And nobody's had any, no one's called and said, you know, I feel like this didn't work out for me or anything like that. I think the kids are actually pretty reasonable, so, which is good.
Okay. Thank you.
From the chair, Mr. Council Sani? Oh, from my chair, if I may, I just have one question. I could see the age being at the 70, but what is the idea of the annual income have to do with anything?
Well, I think the thought of this was, and, you know, with the change to the other language for the elderly exemption, if we did do that, it would be, the way that that exemption works is $13,000 if single and less than $15,000 if married. That's the way that the property exemption works. But I think the thought was that if you make a certain amount of money a year as a senior, because you may be a working senior, there are seniors that work, or you have income coming in some other way, that the thought was that those people could probably afford to hire someone to shovel, and that this program was more for somebody who wasn't physically able to shovel and couldn't afford to have someone shovel. I think that was the thought of the waiver when it was first introduced 2 years ago. I think 3 years ago when you guys did this.
One more thing, like I said before, if a person is at 70 years old, and and she has a disability, and she can't shovel, and maybe she has money, that means she's exempt. They can't qualify for the waiver.
If this is the way it was written, that would be true. If they, well, I mean, you still could probably get on it under the executive director, have the authority to issue waivers for a demonstrative physical disability. That's different. But if we did the elderly exemption way, if we followed the elderly exemption way, which Councilor Hanlon, you weren't here, but I suggested that might be a way to use the waiver, is that if you qualify for the elderly person's property tax exemption, you would be exempt, and it would be easy enough for us to figure that out. The thought is that if you qualify for that, you cannot afford to have someone come and shovel you out. Or you can't afford to pay someone. That was my thought process.
Okay. Thank you. Councilor Hannon?
There's 80 people who qualify for the elderly person's exemption. 80 properties that qualify for the elderly person's exemption. So they are over. 80. It's okay. 80 would qualify for not needing, at this point today, 80 homes would qualify for not needing to shovel. That means that they are over 70 and make less than $13,000 or have less than $13,000 if single and less than $15,000 if married.
We have people that own homes that are in that category?
Certainly, 80.
Oh,
We have
okay,
80.
that wasn't my question. My question is, what are you going to do about sidewalk plows? Are they still going to exist? Are they still going to be around?
Yes, yes.
So they'll still be doing the job that they're supposed to be doing?
Yes, we'll continue to use the sidewalk plows.
Okay, and
We're actually looking at
as I mentioned the last time, what about someone that puts snow on a shoveled sidewalk? That's a problem I have, and I know a lot of people in the main drag have that problem. I shovel my sidewalk off, the guy comes across the street, onto the sidewalk, and he puts snow all over our sidewalk, not deep, an inch deep or something like that.
So frustrating.
But if you don't get to it, it's ice the next day.
No, I agree.
Can't shovel it. So we have to do something about that too, you know.
Yep.
Either they put salt down or that chemical down or whatever it is as they go along. But we can't be held responsible because a plow comes along and fills the sidewalk. And that happens on Main Street, probably on Broadway, I don't know, but it probably happens on Elm Street, you know, Hancock Street, those streets where the plows can really pick up some speed and throw that snow onto the sidewalk.
We'll speak to the city services director about
Yeah.
the speed of the trucks, 'cause I think that that's probably causing what we talked about last time. I think
I
that
mean,
you.
anytime there's more than 3 inches of
Right.
snow, it happens to me.
Right.
So I know it has to happen to other people
Right.
on Main Street anyway.
And you seem to, when we talked before, you seem to think it was due to the speed of the trucks on Main Street.
Yeah, I think they're
Yeah.
moving a little bit too fast.
So we'll talk
you
to
know?
them about that.
So-
'Cause they shouldn't be, I mean, if the snowable, they should be, if there's plowable snow, they should be driving at a slower speed
I'm
than
telling
that.
you, the second last storm we had, it went 8 feet from the curbstone
Yeah,
over
that's
the
not
sidewalk and into yards.
Yeah.
So I know they're moving along. I see that happen
Yeah,
all the time.
we can't have that.
Okay, all right.
Councilman McGonigal.
Ever since I've been in public office, this has been an issue that's come up before as a councilman, as an alderman. I've always debated greatly with the former councilor, Joe Hickey. This is a pet peeve of his to bring this up. I know it's an issue, but I don't believe that we can, fine people for not shoveling the snow in front of their house. I don't believe it's right. That homeowner doesn't own the sidewalk. He owns to it. My whole life living in Everett, your neighbor helped you out. If you were elderly, that's how it was. Now, I know times have changed. Great point is with Councilor Hamlin saying, you live on a main drag, or you own a piece of property on the main drag, you clean it. Plow comes by and throws the snow back on it. That's just one instance, but there's plenty of others on private property. Now, refresh my memory. We spent money a few years ago on a sidewalk plow. Didn't we spend, I don't know.
I think we asked for 2 sidewalk plows
And we-
last year, and it
and we-
was.
and we allocated one.
We
Was
didn't
that-
get any, I don't think we
You
got any.
didn't get any.
No.
I'd have, and I apologize.
That's
I'd have
okay.
to look that up.
Yeah, I don't believe that we got any last year.
Okay.
We did put in the capital improvement this time for a Bobcat with a plow attachment. This time
I
around.
thought I remember the mayor a few years ago, maybe 4 years ago or 3 years ago, talking about when we allocated money to buy a couple of snowplows.
Mm. I know
that
last year it
they-
failed.
They were capable of going through most of the city. And I'm all for that.
Yeah.
I really am. Melissa, I'm talking from experience
Mm-hmm.
because I'm out in the snowstorms in Everett. I'm not anywhere else, and I still do homes
Mm-hmm.
that I did when I was a child.
No,
okay?
I agree. I can only tell you.
And I want to say this,
Yeah.
I get calls, and another, I do get calls from the elderly saying, Mr. McGonigal, we can't get by, we've called City Hall, there's not enough kids to plow it, and I don't get, I'll help them out, but I don't get to it for 2 or 3 days, to be quite honest. The gentleman on the corner of Everett Street and Main Street, he's got a long piece of property. I mean, are we making him liable to shovel that whole corner? I think you're penalizing him, you know what I mean? The guy spends enough money on his home. I disagree with what you're trying to do on that premises. We don't own the sidewalk, the city does, and I disagree with what we're trying to do. And I don't have the answer. I don't have the answer, because it's tough.
It's a big problem.
The city itself has not plowed sidewalks. 66 Main Street, I brought my own machine down there, and it wasn't last year in any of these storms, but it was a few years back where the residents there couldn't get out to that bus stop. And, and that was a city-owned sidewalk as far as I was concerned. I mean, and we weren't doing it at that one particular storm for whatever reason. So it's difficult when you're out in those snowstorms, and then it's, the city gets criticized enough for trying to keep up with a snowstorm. Now we're gonna penalize a neighbor or a homeowner for not shoveling their sidewalk. And this was my biggest question on it. I'd be fined all the time. I'd be the first one that you people would absolutely penalize me because my house is the last one to get done. Because I'm out in it. So what do you do to me? And I'm just saying that, even people working at night, guys on a night shift, the storm comes in, he comes home and wants to go to bed. The last thing that poor guy wants to do is come out and shovel the sidewalk, and we wake up and, it's a very difficult issue. I've never been for it, Thank you for listening to me.
Counselor Sani.
Thank you. We talk about 80 people that'll be exempt. Who will pay, and if they don't have the money, who pays for this services?
My thought is that we would either try to use the community service volunteers or that the city would get to their 80 sidewalks. Would they be done within the 10 hours of the end of cessation of the storm? I don't know if we'd be able to do that quickly, depending on the,
But they'd be exempt from being
right, but they'd be
penalized.
exempt from getting tickets.
Right. And the other thing, I know in the past, we talked about the city getting everything done in their areas in the same, because if we're making the homeowners responsible, the city also has to be responsible.
And
I
this
know it-
ordinance requires the city as well.
It would
You
have to be,
give us the equipment.
right.
But it applies to all residences, businesses, including anything owned by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, the city of Everett, houses of worship, and nonprofit entities.
Okay. The other thing is, I know I mentioned in the prior discussion, not this time, but years before, can we put the wording in for homeowners not being responsible for someone slipping and falling once we touch it? I know you said no before,
I would never recommend that.
but you never, but you're
No.
saying that once we touch the sidewalk, we're not responsible. You're saying we're not responsible. If we shovel the sidewalk, we're not responsible if someone slips and
As
falls.
a homeowner,
Yes.
the courts have said that a property owner would not be held liable.
Just because they move the snow. It doesn't
Just
make you
because
any
they
more
move-
liable.
Yeah,
I guess that's
doesn't
the,
make you any
any
more
more
liable.
But we
liable.
can't put the wording in here because you don't agree, okay.
Well,
And that's where I
My
think
job
we're.
is to protect the city.
Right,
and
and,
that doesn't
and
protect
me
the
as a
city.
homeowner knows that if I touch the sidewalk, someone slips and falls, which I shovel my sidewalk anyways, I always have. I actually do almost a good quarter of Main Street, and then the sidewalk plows comes after I've done it. And I knew, John Hanlon also mentioned, Council Hanlon mentioned about the snow coming over. And those snows were heavy boulders this time. It was bad, because I couldn't even get my snow blower back out. I didn't support it, the first year I did support it, and then after all the other years I didn't, because of the language we couldn't put in, being a homeowner couldn't be responsible, so I kinda still iffy on this. And then
Yeah, it's tough for us because we, in the mayor's office, we get the phone calls, about,
Sure.
from parents. I just walked my kid to school and I don't know what to do. We're walking in the street, I can't see around the corner when I'm coming out. People sending us pictures of giant mounds of snow. I tried to push my baby carriage to get my son. I ended up having to leave the baby carriage and walk back with him. And so it's hard because that's the stories we're hearing. People are afraid to walk to school because they can't see past the snowbank.
And I agree with you, because I know my first year when I jumped on with Joe Hickey, and I supported it because I took a child to the hospital because he slipped and fell on the way to school because he was walking on the street. So at first I went gung-ho with it, but then after all the years after, I went no with it after seeing more things that came along. So I do agree people should shovel, but to force them, I don't know, I'm still iffy on that part. Thank you.
Counselor Hanlon?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At our last meeting, we were discussing this. I had mentioned, and you just touched on it, about a court case, or the courts have said, and I think I had said at our last meeting that the one that I read is that the homeowner was not responsible for the sidewalks in front of their home. However, if they put ice or snow or anything that went over onto the sidewalk, then it was their job to take care of it, such as a drain spout that leaked and the water went over the sidewalk and it froze, that was your responsibility to clear it up. But I know that it said the homeowner is not responsible for covering up removing their snow. Did you look for that or anything? Did anybody find that?
Yeah, I before you came in, we were having that discussion.
Okay.
I had pulled out my old file, and there was a rule in a general rule in Massachusetts that said that unnatural accumulation would be the liability of the homeowner if they if there was an ordinance that said that they were responsible for the snow removal.
I thought that meant an unnatural accumulation was their property. So if you have stairs and a walkway to get up and a flight of stairs and a couple more to get in for the mailman, or for anyone, you know, UPS or milkman or whoever's delivering, that's your responsibility to make sure that's cleared.
Right, and like I said, if there was an ordinance requiring the homeowner to shovel, the rule was that any unnatural accumulation, the property owner who was required under the ordinance to shovel would be responsible. Well, there was a lawsuit a few years back, I can't remember what year, 2009, 2010, something like that, that kind of reversed that general rule and said the homeowner would not be found responsible. It's,
But were we talking about their property or public property?
no. If there's an ordinance that requires property owners to shovel sidewalks,
Uh-huh.
that's what I'm talking about.
And we can make an ordinance regardless
Yep.
of...
Boston has
Yep.
one.
Oh, there's a
Well, I
lot of
mean,
communities.
I know lots of places have one, but, and maybe they're doing the same thing that we're doing. Oh, well, let's put it in. And they may or may not be right. And I would, who's that?
My daughter, yeah.
Come in and join the meeting, she's probably smarter than us.
She's with Dave.
But anyway, that's what I'm more interested in, because I know someone's gonna wake up and say to me, John, you know something, you guys passed something really bad, because the court says you can't even do that. And that's what I think it is, but I'm not positive.
No, even 40U, Mass General Law 40U refers to snow shoveling ordinances and how they're allowed.
Okay, I'm still not happy with this though, but anyway, okay.
I'd like to make a motion to lay it on the table, so we can think about it a little longer, and
Last time we had a public hearing, I don't know if you remember.
I don't, and if I may, Mr. Chairman? Yes.
I rescind my motion.
Yeah,
just
I'd be
thinking about that, we
interested, I'd be
did.
interested to hear what the citizens said.
It lasted a couple of hours. No one remembers that? It was a few hours long. People got, it was an excited group. There was a lot of people here. It was probably split right down the middle, but I mean, I could get you the video. If you didn't want to have another one, I could certainly get you the video if you wanted to see it.
I wouldn't be opposed to it, just to hear, because I wasn't, you know, Mr. Chairman, I wouldn't be opposed to something like that, having, you know,
So lay it on the table?
yeah.
Well, you know, I don't think anybody will attend. You know why? Because there's no snow on the ground, and there won't be any snow on the ground for another 6 or 7 months.
I can bring the video and show it to you if you want to lay it over to the next meeting, you can watch the video.
Yeah.
It's up to you. Or I could
What,
take.
you just saying you had a public hearing?
We had a public hearing last time around. You remember, John? You must have been here. Yeah. 2 years ago, when this came up, there was a public hearing
Oh,
on this matter.
I'm sorry, 2 years ago I didn't know. Okay, yeah, I think I'd like to see that.
I'll bring the video next time.
But
It's a long video. Just wanted you.
But, Mr. Chairman, one more thing?
Okay, Counselor.
Okay?
John's absent that day.
Counselor Ham.
If you could, yeah.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, me?
I can
Counselor
make
Ham.
copies
I'm
and
in-
send them home with you on Monday night.
I'm interested in getting a copy of those law cases, if you would, for me, okay? And you don't have to give them to Caroline, and maybe everybody in the committee should get those, and she'll mail them out to us. Just
I'll
give her one copy.
scan them and email them to her, and then she can forward them to
Okay,
whoever.
okay, thank you.
So I'll make a motion to lay this over and have them give us copies of the video so we can all watch it. And
To the entire city council, to let
I can do
our
that.
colleagues
Yeah.
look at that, just so when it comes up for a vote, they can,
I'll put it in your mailboxes for Monday night.
okay.
Can we?
I'll second that motion.
Can we have that motion again, please?
lay it over the table, lay it over and get a copy of the meeting, the public hearing, so everyone can see, to every council member,
And the court cases.
and the court cases.
The motion is to lay it over until we get the copies of the city solicitor and chief of staff of the public hearing and present it back to the main council.
Well, for the committee.
The committee.
Committee, yeah.
All in favor? Opposed?
Thank you.
The
Mr.
ayes have it. The
Motion
order
to
has
adjourn.
passed.
What else was before us? Anything?
That's it. Ladies, thank you for appearing. You are excused with
Did
customary.
we adjourn
thanks.
yet? Did we
Did we?
adjourn? Oh, we adjourned?
Have we?
Well, are we adjourned or not?
Adjournment.
What do we do with that?
Wait a minute. Greg? Sorry, that,
Okay. What's the motion?
oh,
Mr. Chairman, on
okay.
the motion,
Motion.
if I could, before we adjourn, I would like to discuss the first thing. I'm sorry I was late, but I was stuck at the airport. And I would like to discuss the first part of that meeting, which is the expense account for the council. If I could do that, I would appreciate it. Okay, so if nobody objects, I would.
The
really
motion is, okay, thank you, Counselor. The motion is to adjourn. All in favor?
No, okay, good. Yeah,
Aye, all opposed?
aye.
The ayes have it. We have adjourned.
Don't the vote, Mr. Chairman.
No. Let's,
It was
let's
1
do
to
it.
1, wasn't it?
Rescind the motion, please.
I rescind the motion for
Second.
adjournment.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
All right, we like to bring the
Mr. Chairman, I'd like the motion that we bring the first item of business back before us
Reconsideration.
for reconsideration.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
Did you get a
Number
copy of
1,
this?
please.
Is that it?
This
Do
is
I-
it, yeah.
I'll get a copy on the back.
I think they handed it out.
Hey, you want to look at mine one second? So, basically, except everything he said, right? We just changed this and this and that, and that, so, isn't that the same, is it that it is the same time, so you're looking for, into internet, monitor it, and then, that you just look at it, and everything else you, make it, someone else pays.
Mr. Chairman,
Clerk,
if,
would you read number 1 again, please? Can we read it again? Okay, Counselor Hanlon.
Mr. Chairman, I thank you all for letting me do this. The 2 items that were in there, the phone, $25 a month reimbursement, and the internet, $25 a month in reimbursement, I am so opposed to those. I don't know anyone that spends $25 a month on the phone, calling anybody, anywhere. And on the internet, you know, my internet is like $65 a month or $75 a month, whatever it is. And the time that I spent on government business is I'm already being paid for that. I already have my salary, and I'm getting money for doing that stuff on there. I'm opposed to both of these things, and I know that these are the only 2 new things that are added in, but I'm opposed to the whole complete idea. You know, and you know, we're talking about, you know, saying that a counselor has and there's 11 of us, an 11th of that fund for them, and that's not right, because you know what would happen if, for instance, we wanted to send flowers to a deceased person that we know, or you know, that we would do that. Well, where does that money come from? We pass around the hat, or can we just take it out of that? What if we work on a Saturday on the budget or something else that comes up, and it's lunchtime, and we want to send out for lunch? What do? I'll put chip in? No, it comes out of that budget. That's where it comes from, you know? What if there's something else that's an emergency that we have to go somewhere? That's where it comes from. It doesn't come out of a split that everybody gets, you know? And I don't think that we're ever going to spend all of that money anyway. There's no way that we could spend that much money. What we don't spend is going to go back anyway. I don't think we should just have that budget in there for however it's going to be used, and that's it. This business about dividing up and splitting up and sharing and all that business goes against my grain, because we're being paid handsomely compared to what we were being paid last year. When I say we, I mean the city fathers, you know. So I don't think it's right that we do that. And I thank you for voting for it, but I just want to get it off my chest of how I feel about this thing, you know, and that's how I will vote. So with that, I will be quiet. Now you guys can do whatever you want to say.
From the chair, isn't the president of the council has discretion of what you, he has to okay it?
Everything that you do.
Yeah.
Everything.
That's,
Yeah, right.
well, that's fair. Councilor Napolitano.
As far as the expenses, the reimbursement for phone and for internet, it's not a reimbursement for your time. It's reimbursement for the cost of your of purchasing and having that tool to be able to utilize that service. Okay, I mean, if you were to go down the library, sit down and use the internet there for free, that's one thing. But if you're maintaining an internet service at your home, $25 is a percentage of what it costs to maintain decent internet. It's not going to pay for that internet, and I think it's the same thing with the phone. I mean, personally, I think that the phone should be either landline or cell phone. I didn't speak up when that discussion came about because, I didn't want to be the one to try to rule, dictate to the committee on how they think it should be reimbursed. I want to see how anybody else felt about it. but I think it's reimbursement for tool. It's not a reimbursement for our time. Our salary covers our time. Having served on the council as long as I did with no expense account and no ability to be reimbursed, these things would always come out of my own pocket. Things like flowers, if you want to send flowers, that does follow into an area where I think we had a discussion about what's considered political and what's considered prudent course of doing business as an elected official. If we're sending an item out collectively as a city council, then I think that's something that should be assessed against the budget, against the expense account collectively. But if we're sending it out individually, anything that has your name on it rather than city council, it's not considered a valid reimbursable expense
I know
anyway.
that. Yes, I
You can't run ads, you can't,
I know. Unless the ad is for good reason, unless we're gonna have classes up here for students from the high school that the city council is gonna sponsor.
But that would be reimbursed differently than us individually. It wouldn't be,
No, but it
you know,
would come out
Peter
of that
Napoleon.
account.
Right.
And you wouldn't have to reimburse anybody, it would just come out of that account. Anything you put in the paper would come out of that account. What if we wanted to give an honorarium to somebody? Someone that really does a bang-up job for the council. They work very hard. They're not part of the council at all. They just want to do something. Supposing John works 3 weeks in the summer on a very, very hard project. Wouldn't it be nice if we give him a little plaque or something? Not that you're going to do that. I mean, maybe you will, John. I don't know. But, wouldn't it be nice if we could just say, and take that out of the budget? Of course, we vote on it. Everybody votes on spending that money, And, we have people that have done some work for us. Somebody at the library does a research project for us, something, We could pay them. We could give them a stipend, not that we have to give them a big salary, but something to say thank you. Not a trophy, but, a wall plaque with a clock in it or something like that. What if we want to do something like that? Where does it come from? Again, you got to pass the hat, or say everybody's got to chip in $9.32. No, that's not right. Take it out of the budget. That's what that money is for. That's how we're supposed to use it. We're not supposed to get personal gain out. Not that $25 and $25 is personal gain, but we just, I don't think it's right, and I don't think that $25 would cover the cost of my machine that I'm using for the amount of time that I spend on government business. I don't think so. The machine is sitting there, and you can't say that I turn it on and I'm waiting for something to come in for the council as an expense. It isn't. Well, that's the way I feel. You guys can do what you want, but I know what I'm going to do. And I'm not I don't oppose to anybody doing what you want to do, but I'm just saying what I feel like, what it could be. So with that, I will, if the lawyer would say, rest my case.
Very well put, Councilor Ham.
Anybody, so,
Motion on a favorable action,
What's that?
motion for a favorable action as,
motion to put
Yeah,
on
I'm going
favorable
to second, to recommend,
Motion
with the
for
original,
favorable.
for favorable
Original.
action.
Motion was made was keep it original and the way it was, and favorable action. All in favor?
aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
One opposed. Yeah. The ayes have it.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Before we adjourn, I just want to make it, I'm sorry I adjourned too early before, but I'm just still learning a little bit, so please bear with me out there. Okay, motion is to adjourn. Is the second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The ayes have it, we have adjourned. Amen.